Let's create our vehicle class first. We'll define the vehicle attributes. And remember, this is just an example. You can have many more attributes that make sense for a vehicle class to have. Now we create the constructor. We can then create the getter and setter methods. And we're not breaking encapsulation because we're using private, and these are all string type attributes, so they act as if they're primitive types. So getters and setters are fine. Our constructor is not breaking encapsulation, so all good here. I'll collapse these methods for now. So as we discussed before, we can have a drive method, and maybe we can just print something out just to keep things simple. We will also have accelerate and decelerate methods. Great, so now we have a very simple vehicle class. Now let's create our boat class. We want boat to inherit from vehicle. So we will say extends vehicle. And then we define the unique attribute of boat, which was rudder. And after that, we write the constructor. So what do we want our boat constructor to have? We not only want the boat constructor to have the rudder attribute, but we also want it to have all the attributes of vehicle because it extends from vehicle, which means that it inherits from vehicle, right? So we will include all the attributes from vehicle class as well as the boat class. But just including them doesn't complete our task because boat does not have these attributes in the boat class, right? These attributes are in the vehicle class. So somehow we have to connect the vehicle attributes to the boat class. Remember that vehicle is the superclass and the boat class is a subclass. So here we use the keyword super, and we also write this.rudder equals rudder. So just to make it a bit clearer for you, this engine is this engine, okay? So let's actually change these a little bit just so you understand which variable is which. So these are the inputs that come from the user when they are creating a boat object. And here we're using the constructor of the superclass. Remember that this is using the constructor method of the superclass. And what is the constructor method of the superclass? The vehicle class is the superclass. So it goes here and looks at the constructor. And here the constructor says string engine, string seat, string fuel type. We use exactly this here: engine, seats, and fuel type. I'll explain this a bit more when we actually create a boat object in the main class. But now let's create the unique method and the getter and setter methods for the boat class. So at first, the getter and setter methods. Since we only have the rudder attribute, we'll only have the getter and setter methods for rudder. The unique method that we identified was docking. So we define that. And again, just to keep it simple, we just print something out. So let's say it just prints out the word docking. Oh, there's a problem here. It should be in_rudder because we want this variable to come here. Great, now let's understand what's going on in the constructor by actually creating an object in the main class using our boat class. So let's go to the main method, and here let's create a boat object. So at first we state what the type of the object is. We then assign a name to our object. We use the new keyword, and then we're now using the constructor. And in the constructor, we need to input the different values of the attributes that we want our boat object to have. So let's say it has a steam engine. Let's say it's just an old boat. Then we need to define the number of seats. So let's say, actually, the number of seats should be integer, right? And in that case, the getter and setter methods also change. And also this changes in the constructor. So now going back to creating our object, let's say it has 20 seats. We also need to define the fuel type. So let's say we assign it as coal. And for rudders, let's say it had double rudders. And that creates our extremely non-environmentally friendly boat. But we have our boat object. So what is happening here? So at first, the program comes here, right? It sees that it first needs to go into the boat class because this is a boat type object. And it also knows that we are creating a new object because of the new keyword. It then goes to the boat constructor with these values: steam engine, 20, coal, and double rudders. So let's go to the boat constructor from here. If we go to the boat class and go to the boat constructor, which is here, you see the very first thing that we input is steam engine. And so steam engine comes here in_engine. Then we said 20. So that 20 integer comes here. Then we said coal, which comes here, and then we said double rudders, which comes here. Now, after that, the program moves to this line. Here, it sees that it needs to find the superclass. It knows that the superclass is vehicle, and it also knows that it needs to find the superclass's constructor. So it goes to the superclass's constructor, taking these values with it. So this is in_engine, which comes here. So the value of this in_engine was steam engine. So this is also steam engine. This is 20 and this is coal. So it then takes steam engine, 20, and coal to the superclass's constructor. So let's go to the superclass's constructor. Now, when it comes to the vehicle constructor, it has 3 values already, right? It has steam engine, which comes here. It has 20, which comes here. And it has coal, which comes here. It then assigns the engine value, which is steam engine, to this dot engine, which is this variable. It assigns 20 here. From here, the 20 comes here and gets assigned to seats, which is this variable. And it also came in with the value coal for fuel type, and that value comes here, which then gets assigned to this dot fuel type, which is this variable. So now our variables for the object my boat, because our object's name is my boat, right? For the object my boat, the vehicle class's engine attribute has a value steam engine. For the object my boat, the vehicle class's seats value is 20, and for the object my boat, the vehicle class's fuel type is coal. So I hope you understand the flow now. The program comes here, it goes to the boat constructor. When it goes to the boat constructor, it sees that it needs to go to the super constructor, and the super is vehicle. So we go to the vehicle constructor with the values that we got from here. These values came to the boat constructor, and from the boat constructor, these values were carried to the superclass's constructor, which is the vehicle class's constructor. So for example, steam engine comes to the boat constructor first, comes here, and then it's taken to the superclass's constructor. So steam engine goes to the superclass's constructor, and the superclass's constructor is the vehicle class. So it comes here, and this engine variable's value becomes steam engine, which then gets assigned to the engine attribute of the vehicle class. So that is the flow for all the variables. However, for rudder, the double rudder's value goes to the boat class and just comes here, which then gets assigned to the rudder attribute of the boat class. So now boat has 4 attributes. The 4 attributes of boat are engine, seats, fuel type, and rudder. And the engine value is steam engine, the seats value is 20, the fuel type's value is coal, and the rudder's value is double rudders. However, these attributes do not reside or do not exist in the boat class. 3 of those attributes exist in the vehicle class, but we can use that because boat extends vehicle, because boat is a child of vehicle, and vehicle is the superclass. So that is how this constructor is working. So I hope you understand what the word super means and how it is used in the constructors of the child classes. So let's see which methods the boat object that we created can access. So we'll write myBoat dot, and you see it can get the dock method, which is a method that we have in the boat class. It can also get the getRudder and setRudder methods. These are also methods in the boat class. But you see, it can also get all the different methods of the vehicle class as well. Accelerate, decelerate, drive, get engine, fuel type, seats. All of these things are methods of the vehicle class, but the boat object that we created can use these methods because they are public methods in the parent class. So let's try and find the engine type for the object that we created right now. We'll use the get method for engine, and let's print this out. So you see it does say steam engine, which means that the methods from the parent class for our object works. What if we use the drive method? Let's see what the output is for this method. So you see it says driving. So we're using a boat object, but we're using a method from the parent class, which is drive. This method has not been defined in boat, but we can still use it using our boat object. And that is how inheritance works. Let's now create our plane class. We'll define the attribute. We'll keep it as integer because Wingspan would have a measurement. how many meters or how many feet. Let's then create the constructor. But before that, let's inherit from vehicle. Great. Now let's create a constructor. And here we do the same thing. We use the supers constructor for engine, seats, and fuel type. And we just use the statement this.wingspan equals wingspan for the attribute of the plane class. Let's create the getter and the setter methods. And we will only have one getter and one setter method because we only have one attribute named wingspan here. And we'll also create the landing method. Great. Now we have our plane class that inherits from the vehicle class. Let's create our fighter jet class now. Again, here we'll have an attribute. We'll call it ammo type. We'll create the constructor. We'll say that it inherits from plane, and then we'll create the constructor. And here you can see that the constructor is a bit different. We are including everything from vehicle because plane inherits from vehicle. We're including everything from plane, the wingspan, because fighter jet inherits everything from plane. And we're also including the attribute that fighter jet has for itself. But when we're using the super constructor, we don't use two separate constructors. We use just one constructor. And this constructor is the plane constructor. If you go to the plane class, you'll see that we'll have engine, seats, fuel type, and wingspan in the plane constructor. So we have engine, seats, fuel type, and wingspan in the plane constructor. So fighter jet's constructor is basically going to the plane's constructor because that is the superclass for fighter jet. It takes all the values that are input when we're creating an object. Those values are then transferred to the super constructor. Well, 4 of those values. The ammo type remains here. 4 of these values go to the super constructor, which is the plane's constructor, and they come here. 3 of them go to the vehicle constructor, and this just assigns the value of wingspan here. The other 3 values go into the vehicle constructor, and in the vehicle constructor, they get assigned to these variables in the vehicle class. So I hope you understand the flow. Let's create a fighter jet object. Let's delete these because we won't be needing these anymore. So at first, we'll create the fighter jet object, and we'll say that this is of type fighter jet. We'll call it myjet, and then we type in the new keyword, and then we say fighter jet, and this is basically the fighter jet's constructor. And you can see that it already tells us that we need to input the engine, seats, fuel type, wingspan, and ammo type. So let's put in the engine. It'll be jet engine. There are only 2 seats max in the jet, so we'll say just 2. The fuel type would be jet fuel. Let's say the wingspan is 4 meters, and let's say the ammo type is HEI. So what's happening here? At first, the program comes here. It sees that it needs to go to the fighter jet class. It's a new object being created, and it needs to go to the fighter jet constructor with all these values. So it takes these values, jet engine 2, jet fuel 4, and HEI. It takes these values and goes to the fighter jet constructor. So let's go to the fighter jet constructor. It comes here. It puts in all the values here, and then 4 of these values go to the super constructor, while the ammo type HEI just gets assigned to the ammo type attribute here. What's happening to these 4 values? They go to the super constructor. The super class for this fighter jet class is plane. So it goes to the plane class with these 4 values. It goes to the constructor with these 4 values. And in the plane constructor, it sees that it needs to go 1 level up again. It takes one of those values, assigns it to the wingspan, which is the attribute of the plane class. And then the remaining 3 values go to the vehicle class. In the vehicle class, the remaining 3 values come here, and then they get assigned to these attributes. And these attributes are engine, seat, and fuel type. And these are the attributes for the vehicle class. And that is how the whole flow works. Now, myjet is our fighter jet object, and myjet can use all the methods of plane as well as all the methods of vehicle. So you can see that fighter jet will be able to use landing. You see, landing is available. Fighter jet can also use get fuel type, and get fuel type is a method from the vehicle class, right? There it is. So it can use all the methods of its parents class and all the methods of its grandparents class as well. And it doesn't matter how many parents are above it, it will be able to use all those parents methods as long as those methods are public or protected. So our methods are mostly public, so the fighter jet object will be able to use all those methods. So we'll need to print this. This already has a print command in it. This will need to be printed separately. So let's put the printing command here and let's run the program. So you see, it can use the landing method. It says landing, and it can also use the get fuel type, which is jet fuel. So So now you not only understand how inheritance works conceptually, but now you also have seen a very simple coded example of how inheritance works. There is one very important thing, and keep this in mind. If you want to inherit, you can only inherit from one class. You cannot inherit from multiple classes. So fighter jet can only inherit from one class, and we chose that class to be plane. Because fighter jet already inherited from plane, we cannot make fighter jet inherit from any other class. So remember this, a class can only inherit from one and only one parent. Another thing is to keep in mind that vehicle is the topmost parent for our design, right? After that, we have plane, and after that, we have fighter jet. So vehicle is the topmost parent, and then comes plane, and then comes fighter jet. If we are creating a fighter jet object, then we usually assign the object type to be fighter jet, but you can also assign it to be plane. In the same way, you can also assign it to be vehicle. However, when you use plane, MyJet can use the landing method. But if you define it as vehicle, it will not be able to use the landing method because the landing method is not in vehicle. So based on how you define it here, you can also control which methods an object can or cannot access. Right now, we would want it to have access to all the methods. So obviously, we will define it as fighter jet. But keep this in mind that this can be defined as the topmost parent because this concept would be used in our next video about polymorphism. So there you have it. This is a very simple explanation of inheritance. You will get a reading material link in the homework. Make sure that you go through everything in that link to understand inheritance in detail.